Hi, it's Carrie with Clay Revolution. Hope you're doing great today. Today I'm going to show you some simple refining tips that will help make your finished pieces look even better. Okay, what I've got here are a few pieces of dried metal clay. A little bit more challenging to refine it with the insides showing there, so I thought this would be a good example to show you how I do some of my refining. The first thing that I'll talk about is just a regular emery board. Um, and I use that primarily when I've got straight edges like this. That's going to help me keep my straight edges straight. So I'm going to come in with the coarser side first and take off the majority of the clay very delicately, trying to keep my piece at a 90-degree angle from the emery board. Okay. Then I can use the other side of the emery board, which is a little bit finer, to come in and finish that up a little bit. And I can go a little faster with that. Okay. Now, one of the other things that I like to do on my pieces is round my edges a little bit so that it's not so sharp. With that, I'm going to use one of the sanding sponges. They come in 5 packs, and you kind of get a feel for what grits you like to use for different techniques. The medium grit is actually, the one that's called medium is actually pretty coarse. So I actually like to use, I believe it's the ultra fine is the one that I use for most of my work. With silvers, I take that back, with silvers. With the base metals, you can use some tougher grits because the metal is a little bit harder, so it actually takes to sanding a little bit harder as well. So I just lightly come in, round those edges with the sanding sponge. That's going to help me get a rounder, the sponge conforms, so it'll help me get a rounder surface. I use sanding sponges on items that are round, such as something like this, because it really will conform much better. This one happens to be curved the wrong direction because I was using it prior, but you can see how this will come in and do a rounded surface better. Okay, so I'm going to do my edges. Just like that. Okay, now we get to talk about the inside. So, the first thing that I like to do is just use my needle tool and rub it along the bottom there to knock off any of the large pieces of clay. There's a little chunk right there. And that's why I'm using my needle tool to do that, because it's a lot easier to knock that off than it is to get in there and sand it evenly. So I'm just kind of picking at that a little bit. There, much better. Okay, finally got through that. So now you can use something like the little needle sanding files, things like that inside an area like this, and that's very common to do. I don't actually prefer doing that because on a surface like this, if I use a small file, I'm going to dig in very fast and I might actually make a divot there versus, trying to get this even. So I prefer to use the sanding sponge for that. And what I do, and that's why you could see this one was curved in a funky way. What I do is just use the tip of it. So I'm going to put this surface right here onto this edge. That's going to allow me to get a more clean sand rather than put big divots in it with the sanding needles. Okay, and it's easiest if you do that from the back to the front or the front to the back, because then you're sanding evenly, because you're not putting as much pressure on the, if I'm sanding from the front side of the piece, I don't put as much pressure on this edge back here. So I do want to make sure that I turn it around and do both sides. I see a spot right here that I don't like. Let's see if you can see that. See that area right there? Again, I'm going to come in with my needle tool to knock that out. And then come back in with the sanding file. Okay, looks pretty good. Now, the last step that I like to do is clean my edges. Well, actually, second to last step is clean my, oh, I forgot the back. Actually, the back of that looks pretty good. I think I'm not going to sand the back of that one. Sometimes on your pieces you might have, trying to see if I find one here. Yeah, some little bumps, things like that. In that case, you would want to sand the back. This one actually looks pretty good, so I think I'm going to leave that. Yep. So my next step, I'm going to put a little bit of water in a water dish. This is a craft foam, okay? You can get these just at the craft store. I think we even put them in some of our little kits and things like that. So it's just a piece of craft foam. And I just take the tip of that, dab it in the water. Now, you're not trying to absorb water really with the craft foam. You're just using it as a blotter, I guess is the best way to explain that. So I'm going to rub that on the piece, and what that's doing is just smoothing the work. Now I can tell from the back of this that there's again a little area that's not quite even, not quite straight, and I don't like that too much. So, and actually this one, this is a deceiving piece because it really hangs this way. Yes, but that spot right there, I can tell I don't like. So, again, there we go. Much better. Much better. Okay, so now I have what I call mudded all of the corners, all of the edges, the back. Everything is nice and clean. Okay, now I'm going to, because I got that wet, I'm going to re-dry that real quick and then come back for my final touch. Okay, so my piece has been re-dried, and now I'm going to do some burnishing techniques that really will smooth the back of all this pre-firing. Okay, that helps your piece in the end just come out nice and flat and smooth. This is a burnishing tool. There are tons and tons of different kind of burnishing tools. Honestly, you could use the side of an awl, probably not a fine awl, but maybe something like a heavy awl would be really nice to use for this. I have this burnishing tool, which is an antique burnishing tool. I also have regular final polishing burnishing tools, something like this. Any of those kinds of things will work for this process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just lightly, very lightly rub the sides and probably the back of this piece with the burnishing tool to help even out the surface. Okay, so if you look, it looks silver now. Isn't that amazing? But it is still clay. Okay, And since this has some nice borders on it, I'm probably going to burnish some of the top of this as well. This is one of the multi-design mats, and I've cut the center out of it, and I'm just going to use it for a dangly earring. So I'm going to burnish this border that's on here as well, just so it looks nice and flat when it's finished firing. When you're using your burnishing tool, you're really trying to use the flat side if you're going to burnish big flat areas like this, because otherwise you're going to leave sharp scratches in your piece. So I'm being very delicate when I do need to use that pointy end of this one. But for the most part, you see me holding this kind of flat. That's so that I can use the flat side without scratching my piece as much. Okay, I think we got it. So that is my final piece ready for the kiln. And I'm going to throw that in there, fire it, and it will come out nice and refined in the end. I hope you enjoyed the quick video, and please let us know if there's other topics you'd like to learn about. You can always reach us at info@clayrevolution.com, and for all the supplies and kits you need, go to clayrevolution.com. Thank you. Bye.